52. Kapota-Jātaka, the stubborn man. This story was told by the master while at Jetavana monastery, about a certain greedy brother. His greediness will be told in the 9th book in the Veḻuka-Jātaka. But on this occasion the brethren told the master, saying, "Sir, this brother is greedy." Said the master, "Is it true as they say, brother, that you are greedy?" "Yes, sir," was the reply. "So too in past days, brother, you were greedy, and by reason of your greediness lost your life. Also you caused the wise and good to lose their home." And so saying he told this story of the past. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the bodhisattva was born a pigeon. Now the Benares folk of those days, as an act of goodness, used to hang up straw baskets in many places for the shelter and comfort of the birds. And the cook of the Lord High Treasurer of Benares hung up one of these baskets in his kitchen. In this basket the bodhisattva took up his dwelling, swiftly moving out at daybreak in quest of food, and returning home in the evening. And so he lived his life. But one day a crow, flying over the kitchen, snuffed up the good flavor from the salt and fresh fish and meat there, and was filled with longing to taste it. Thinking about how to have his will, he perched hard by, and at evening saw the bodhisattva come home and go into the kitchen. "Ah," thought he, "I can manage it through the pigeon." So back he came next day at dawn, and, when the bodhisattva swiftly moved out in quest of food, kept following him about from place to place like his shadow. So the bodhisattva said, "Why do you keep with me, friend?" "My lord," answered the crow, "your appearance has won my admiration. And from now on it is my wish to follow you. But your kind of food and mine, friend, is not the same," said the bodhisattva. "You will be hard put to it if you attach yourself to me." "My lord," said the crow, "when you are seeking your food, I will feed too, by your side." "So be it, then," said the bodhisattva. "Only you must be earnest." And with this caution to the crow, the bodhisattva ranged about pecking up grass seeds, while the other went about turning over cowding and picking out the insects underneath till he had got his fill. Then back he came to the bodhisattva and remarked, "My lord, you give too much time to eating. Excess in that should be shunned." And when the bodhisattva had fed and reached home again at evening, in flew the crow with him into the kitchen. "Why, our bird has brought another home with him," exclaimed the cook, and hung up a second basket for the crow. And from that time onward the two birds lived together in the kitchen. Now one day the Lord High Treasurer had in a store of fish which the cook hung up about the kitchen. Filled with greedy longing at the sight, the crow made up his mind to stay at home next day and treat himself to this excellent treat. So all the night long he lay groaning away. And next day, when the bodhisattva was starting in search of food, and cried, "Come along, friend crow," the crow replied, "Go without me, my lord. For I have a pain in my stomach." "Friend," answered the bodhisattva, "I never heard of crows having pains in their stomachs before." True, crows feel faint in each of the 3 night watches. But if they eat a lampwick, their hunger is appeased for the moment. You must be yearning after the fish in the kitchen here. Come now, man's food will not agree with you. Do not give way like this, but come and seek your food with me." "Indeed, I am not able, my lord," said the crow. "Well, your own conduct will show," said the bodhisattva. "Only fall not a prey to greed, but stand devoted." And with this advice, away he flew to find his daily food. The cook took several kinds of fish, and dressed some one way, some another. Then lifting the lids off his saucepans a little to let the steam out, he put a perforated bowl on the top of one and went outside the door, where he stood wiping the sweat from his brow. Just at that moment out popped the crow's head from the basket. A glance told him that the cook was away, and, now or never, thought he, is my time. The only question is, shall I choose minced meat or a big lump? Arguing that it takes a long time to make a full meal of minced meat, he resolved to take a large piece of fish and sit and eat it in his basket. So out he flew and descended on the perforated bowl. Click went the perforated bowl. "What can that be?" said the cook, running in on hearing the noise. Seeing the crow, he cried, "Oh, there's that rascally crow wanting to eat my master's dinner. I have to work for my master, not for that rascal. What's he to me? I should like to know." So, first shutting the door, he caught the crow and plucked every feather off his body. Then, he pounded up ginger with salt and cumin, and mixed in sour buttermilk, finally wrapping the crow in the pickle and throwing him back into his basket. And there the crow lay groaning, overcome by the agony of his pain. At evening the bodhisattva came back, and saw the miserable plight of the crow. "Ah! Greedy crow," he exclaimed, "you would not regard my words, and now your own greed has worked for your suffering." So saying, he repeated this stanza. The stubborn man who, when encouraged, pays no regard to friends who kindly advice give, shall surely perish, like the greedy crow, who laughed to contempt the pigeon's warning words. Then, exclaiming, "I too can no longer dwell here," the bodhisattva flew away. But the crow died there and then, and the cook threw him, basket and all, on the dust heap. Said the master, "You were greedy, brother, in past times, just as you are now. And all because of your greediness the wise and good of those days had to abandon their homes." Having ended this lesson, the master preached the four truths, at the close of which that brother won the fruit of the second path. Then the master explained the relation and identified the birth as follows. The greedy brother was the crow of those times, and I the pigeon. Source: adapted from archaic translation by Robert Chalmers. Jataka number 43. Veḻuka-Jātaka. The stubborn man. This story was told by the master while at Jetavana monastery, about a certain stubborn brother. For the Lord Buddha asked him whether the report was true that he was stubborn, and the brother admitted that it was. "Brother," said the master, "this is not the first time you have been stubborn. You were just as stubborn in former days. Also, and, as the result of your stubborn refusal to follow the advice of the wise and good, you met your end by the bite of a snake." And so saying, he told this story of the past. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the bodhisattva was born into a wealthy family in the kingdom of Kasi. Having come to years of discretion, he saw how from passion springs pain and how true bliss comes by the abandonment of passion. So he put lusts away from him, and going on to the Himalayas became a hermit, winning by fulfillment of the mystic meditations the 5 orders of the higher knowledge and the 8 attainments. And as he lived his life in the rapture of insight, he came in after times to have a large following of 500 hermits, whose teacher he was. Now one day a young poisonous viper, wandering about as vipers do, came to the hut of one of the hermits. And that brother grew as fond of the creature as if it were his own child, housing it in a joint of bamboo and showing kindness to it. And because it was lodged in a joint of bamboo, the viper was known by the name of Bamboo. Moreover, because the hermit was as fond of the viper as if it were his own child, they called him Bamboo's father. Hearing that one of the brethren was keeping a viper, the bodhisattva sent for that brother and asked whether the report was true. When told that it was true, the bodhisattva said, "A viper can never be trusted. Keep it no longer." "But," urged the brother, "my viper is dear to me as a pupil to a teacher. I could not live without him." "Well then," answered the bodhisattva, know that this very snake will lose you your life." But regardless of the master's warning, that brother still kept the pet he could not bear to part with. Only a very few days later all the brethren went out to gather fruits, and coming to a spot where all kinds grew in plenty, they stayed there 2 or 3 days. With them went Bamboo's father, leaving his viper behind in its bamboo prison. 2 or 3 days afterwards, when he came back, he thought of feeding the creature, and, opening the cane, stretched out his hand, saying, "Come, my son. You must be hungry." But angry with its long fast, the viper bit his outstretched hand, killing him on the spot, and made its escape into the forest. Seeing him lying there dead, the brethren came and told the bodhisattva, who asked the body to be burned. Then, seated in their midst, he encouraged the brethren by repeating this stanza. The stubborn man, who, when encouraged, pays no regard to friends who kindly advice give, like Bamboo's father, shall be brought to nothing. Thus did the bodhisattva advise his followers. And he developed within himself the 4 noble states, and at his death was reborn into the Brahma realm. Said the master, "Brother, this is not the first time you have shown yourself stubborn. You were no less stubborn in times gone by, and by that met your death from a viper's bite." Having ended his lesson, the master explained the relation and identified the birth by saying, "In those days, this stubborn brother was Bamboo's father, my disciples were the band of disciples, and I myself their teacher." Source: adapted from archaic translation by Robert Chalmers. Jataka number 44. Makasa-Jātaka. Sense-lacking friends. This story was told by the master while on an alms pilgrimage in Magadha, about some stupid villagers in a certain village. Tradition says that, after traveling from Shravasti city to the kingdom of Magadha, he was on his round in that kingdom when he arrived at a certain village, which was crowded with fools. In this village these fools met together one day, and debated together, saying, "Friends, when we are at work in the jungle, the mosquitoes devour us. And that hinders our work. Let us, arming ourselves with bows and weapons, go to war with the mosquitoes and shoot or hack them all to death." So off to the jungle they went. And shouting, "Shoot down the mosquitoes," shot and struck one another, till they were in a sad state and returned only to sink on the ground in or within the village or at its entrance. Surrounded by the order of the brethren, the master came in quest of alms to that village. The sensible minority among the inhabitants no sooner saw the Lord Buddha than they erected a pavilion at the entrance to their village and, after giving large alms to the brotherhood with the Buddha at its head, bowed to the master and seated themselves. Observing wounded men lying around on this side and on that, the master asked those lay brothers, saying, "There are numbers of disabled men about. What has happened to them?" "Sir," was the reply, "they went on to war with the mosquitoes, but only shot one another and so disabled themselves." Said the master, "This is not the first time that these foolish people have dealt out blows to themselves instead of to the mosquitoes they meant to kill. In former times, also, there were those who, meaning to hit a mosquito, hit a fellow creature instead." And so saying, at those villagers' request he told this story of the past. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the bodhisattva gained his livelihood as a trader. In those days in a border village in Kasi there lived a number of carpenters. And it was by chance that one of them, a bald grey-haired man, was planing away at some wood, with his head glistening like a copper bowl, when a mosquito settled on his scalp and stung him with its dart-like sting. Said the carpenter to his sow, who was seated hard by, "My boy, there's a mosquito stinging me on the head. Do drive it away." "Hold still then, father," said the son. "One blow will settle it." Opening parenthesis. At that very time the bodhisattva had reached that village in the way of trade, and was sitting in the carpenter's shop. Closing parenthesis. Rid me of it, cried the father. All right, father, answered the son, who was behind the old man's back, and, raising a sharp axe on high with intent to kill only the mosquito, he split his father's head in two. So the old man fell dead on the spot. Thought the bodhisattva, who had been an eyewitness of the whole scene, better than such a friend is an enemy with sense, whom fear of men's vengeance will deter from killing a man. And he recited these lines. Sense-lacking friends are worse than enemies with sense. See the son that desired the gnat to kill, but split, poor fool, his father's skull in two. So saying, the bodhisattva rose up and departed, passing away in after days to fare according to his deeds. And as for the carpenter, his body was burned by his family. Thus, lay brethren, said the master, in past times also there were those who, seeking to hit a mosquito, struck down a fellow creature. This lesson ended, he explained the relation and identified the birth by saying, in those days I was myself the wise and good trader who departed after repeating the stanza. Jataka number 45. Rohiṇī-Jātaka. Sense-lacking friends. This story was told by the master while at Jetavana monastery, about a maidservant of the Lord High Treasurer, Anathapindika. For he is said to have had a maidservant named Rohiṇī, whose aged mother came to where the girl was pounding rice, and lay down. The flies came round the old woman and stung her as with a needle, so she cried to her daughter, "The flies are stinging me, my dear. Do drive them away." "Oh, I'll drive them away, mother," said the girl, lifting her pestle to the flies which had settled on her mother. Then, crying, "I'll kill them," she hit her mother such a blow as to kill the old woman outright. Seeing what she had done, the girl began to weep and cry, "Oh, mother, mother." The news was brought to the Lord High Treasurer, who, after having the body burnt, went his way to the monastery, and told the master what had happened. "This is not the first time, layman," said the master, "that in Rohiṇī's anxiety to kill the flies on her mother, she has struck her mother dead with a pestle. She did precisely the same in times past." Then at Anathapindika's request, he told this story of the past. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born the son of the Lord High Treasurer, and came to be Lord High Treasurer himself at his father's death. And he, too, had a maidservant whose name was Rohiṇī. And her mother, in like manner, went to where the daughter was pounding rice, and lay down, and called out, "Do drive these flies off me, my dear," and in just the same way she struck her mother with a pestle, and killed her, and began to weep. Hearing of what had happened, the Bodhisattva thought,